Imagine being a 16th century sailor. You are way off the coast of the Iberian Peninsula, and the sky has just violently turned against you.
Oh, an absolutely terrifying place to be.
Right, your massive galleon gets caught in this catastrophic storm, the hull splinters, the ship goes down, and you're just plunged into the freezing, chaotic ocean.
Just desperately clinging to whatever debris you can find.
Exactly, trying to stay alive. And as you're bobbing in the water, trying to catch your breath between these crashing waves, you see a massive sealed wooden crate floating right past you.
Like a giant buoyant coffin.
Yes. But what you probably don't know, as you're fighting for your life, is that the object sealed inside that waterproof crate is considered so incredibly valuable that European royalty recently traded the 16th century equivalent of a state-of-the-art hospital wing just to own it.
It's such a striking image. And I mean, the fact that a legend about this painting surviving a shipwreck even exists tells you so much.
Yeah, it really does.
It was widely believed at the highest levels of the Spanish court. That tells you everything about its aura of sheer invincibility. People genuinely felt this object possessed a power that even the ocean couldn't destroy.
And that object is Rogier van der Weyden's 15th century masterpiece, The Descent from the Cross, or, El Descendimiento in Spanish.
A truly monumental piece of art.
Welcome to our deep dive today. We are taking a massive look at this exact piece of painted wood. And, I want to be clear right up front for you listening, in our modern era, we are totally visually saturated.
Oh, completely.
We scroll past thousands of high-definition, algorithmically optimized images before lunch. We swipe, we double tap, we forget.
Right, it's just endless visual noise.
Exactly. But we are going to reverse the clock today. We are going back to the 1430s to look at an image that was engineered, literally engineered from its oak foundation to its microscopic brushstrokes to completely arrest human attention.
Which is why I like to refer to it as visual technology. This isn't just a pretty picture meant to fill a blank space on a chapel wall.
No, not at all.
It dominated 15th century Flemish art and triggered an absolute avalanche of copies across Europe. Because, it revolutionized how a static, two-dimensional plane could physically manipulate a viewer's emotional state.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is twofold. First, we are going to track the unbelievable, almost cinematic survival story of this physical object.
Which is wild. Shipwrecks, royal obsessions, civil wars.
Oh, narrow escapes from aerial bombardments. It has it all. And second, we are going to pull the painting apart, layer by layer, to decode the mechanics of that visual technology you mentioned.
Right, we're going to figure out exactly how van der Weyden essentially hacked the human brain to manufacture empathy.
Which is so relevant for anyone today.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you understand the architecture of this painting, you start to grasp the universal mechanics of visual empathy. You see how an artist can construct a profound emotional response using nothing but wood, some crushed minerals, and oil.
So, to really grasp the gravity of this thing, we need to start with the people who originally paid for it. Because it wasn't a king or a pope, right?
No, it wasn't.
We're in the city of Leuven, in Flanders, roughly around 1435. And the clients who walk into van der Weyden's workshop are the Leuven Crossbowmen's Guild.
The elite marksmen of the city.
Right, and this is where I need you to clarify something, because I get a little confused here. When I think of the Guild of Crossbowmen, I think of a tough military militia.
Sure, medieval snipers, basically.
Exactly. So why are a bunch of hardened soldiers commissioning a giant painting of people intensely weeping and crying? Why not, like, St. George slaying a dragon or something victorious?
That is a brilliant question, and it cuts right to the heart of 15th century Flemish society. You have to understand that a guild in a city like Leuven wasn't just a professional union.
It was more than that.
Much more. It was a powerful, socioeconomic, political, and crucially religious brotherhood. They were the civic elite.
Okay, that makes sense.
And in the context of Northern European piety at the time, specifically, a movement known as the Devotio Moderna, or modern devotion experiencing deep visceral empathy, wasn't seen as weak.
Interesting.
Actually feeling the physical agony of the crucifixion in your own body, weeping for the Virgin Mary's sorrow, that was the ultimate spiritual goal. Communal weeping was considered a purifying, saving act.
Wow. So they essentially wanted an engine for their own spiritual catharsis. They needed an object that would actively make them cry when they gathered in their chapel.
Exactly. The chapel was called Onze Lieve Vrouw van Ginderbuiten, which means Our Lady outside the walls. And van der Weyden knew exactly who was financing this monumental project.
He didn't just take the money and run.
No, he wove their identity directly into the sacred geometry of the piece. If you look very closely at the upper corners of the composition, tucked away like a hidden signature, he painted these tiny, delicate little crossbows.
I love that detail so much.
Yeah, they're hanging from the architectural tracery. It's this incredibly subtle, permanent nod to the men who made the painting possible.
It's like a 15th century corporate sponsorship, but done with exquisite taste.
Perfectly said.
So the painting lives in this chapel in Leuven for over a century. It's doing its job. The crossbowmen pray to it. They weep in front of it.
It functions as this communal civic tool for salvation.
Right. But then it catches the eye of someone whose desire completely changes its destiny. Mary of Hungary.
Yes, Mary of Hungary is a towering figure in European history.
She was the regent of the Netherlands, right?
And sister to the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. But perhaps most consequentially for art history, she was a voracious, uncompromising collector.
And when she sees it, she has to have it.
Utterly consumed by it. When she visited the chapel and saw the Descent from the Cross, she decided unequivocally that she had to possess it.
But she doesn't just send the royal guard to kick the chapel doors down and steal it, which honestly royals have done for less. Instead, she enters into a negotiation, and the barter they agree upon is just staggering.
It really is.
She offers the church officials a brand new, custom-built organ valued at 1,500 florins, plus a full-scale replica of the painting by an excellent artist named Michel Coxey.
A replica that is still hanging in the Bode Museum in Berlin today, by the way.
Right. Now, to modern ears, trading a painting for an organ sounds sort of quaint, like trading a baseball card for a really nice guitar. But 1,500 florins in the 1540s, that's astronomical, isn't it?
Oh, it is. We really need to contextualize what a church organ represented at that time. It wasn't just an instrument.
What was it then?
It was the absolute pinnacle of complex, expensive machinery. It required a team of specialized architects, metallurgists, acoustic engineers, master woodworkers. It was massive public infrastructure.
Okay.
Trading a painting for an organ is like a tech billionaire today walking into a small-town church and saying, I will build you a state-of-the-art, fully staffed hospital wing and hire a world-class forgery expert to paint you an exact replica if you just let me take that piece of wood off your wall.
Which raises such a fascinating philosophical question for you listening. How does the intrinsic spiritual meaning of this artwork change the moment it is pried off the wall of that crossbowman's chapel?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because it stops being a communal tool for a brotherhood to achieve salvation and instantly becomes a private luxury asset for a royal collector.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are pinpointing the exact paradigm shift that gave birth to the modern art market.
Really? This transaction?
Yes. For the crossbowman, its value was purely its religious utility. But for Mary of Hungary, while she was undoubtedly a devout Catholic, the painting transitioned into an object of aesthetic prestige.
Right. She wanted it in her private palace in Binch.
Exactly. It was valued for the genius of its creator, its absolute rarity, and the status it conferred upon the person who owned it. This trade is the bridge between medieval religious art and the Renaissance culture of high-end collecting.
And once it crosses that bridge into the royal collection, its life gets infinitely more dangerous because royal assets move.
They certainly do.
And this brings us back to the shipwreck I mentioned at the top of the show. We transition now from why this object was so coveted to the sheer miraculous physical durability of it.
Which is a story in itself.
Right. So by 1549, the painting is at Mary's palace. Her nephew, Prince Philip of Spain, who is about to become King Philip II, is doing a tour of the Netherlands. He sees the painting, and just like his aunt, falls under its spell.
The gravitational pull of this image on the Habsburgs is undeniable. Eventually, Mary passes it to Philip.
And around 1555, the royal decree comes down: pack up the masterpiece and ship it from the Netherlands to Spain.
And this is exactly where the legend of the shipwreck is born.
The ship gets caught in a massive storm and sinks, but the 16th century packing crate is so well engineered that the painting floats to the surface and washes ashore completely unscathed. That's essentially royal, heavy-duty Renaissance bubble wrap.
Exactly. Now, historians do debate the literal truth of the vessel going all the way to the bottom of the ocean.
They do.
Yeah, some suggest it was a catastrophic storm where the ship was severely damaged rather than fully submerged. But what is historically documented is that the journey was incredibly perilous.
The painting was in grave danger.
Very much so. And its survival was viewed as bordering on the miraculous. It arrived in Spain essentially intact.
But not perfectly intact, right? Because wood and sea air do not mix perfectly. The shifting humidity and the violent journey caused some minor cracks along the joints of the wooden panels.
Right. The wood expanded and contracted.
So Philip II orders his royal court painters to do a slate restoration. And there's specific detail about this order that just stopped me in my tracks.
It's a fascinating directive.
He explicitly commanded his restorers to only touch up the damaged areas on the clothing and the background. He absolutely forbade them from touching the expressions of pain on the figures' faces.
That directive, documented as without touching the essential parts, is a stunning piece of historical evidence.
I mean, think about Philip II's personality. This is a monarch infamous for his rigid, uncompromising control. He micromanaged a global empire.
The ultimate micromanager, yes.
And yet, he stands in front of this painted wooden board, completely humbled. He essentially says to his staff, "I have the wealthiest, most talented painters in the known world, and none of you are good enough to improve upon this grief. Do not dare touch their tears."
It proves that Philip II didn't just value the painting as a trophy. He deeply, profoundly understood the emotional technology van der Weyden had deployed.
He knew the faces were the core of it.
He recognized that those specific, nuanced expressions of sorrow were the beating heart of the artwork. To let another painter's brush touch them would risk destroying the very soul of the piece.
So he protects the faces. The painting sits safely in the chapel of El Prado, and then it's moved to the massive, fortress-like monastery of El Escorial.
And it sits there, quietly vibrating with emotion, for nearly 400 years.
Until the 20th century arrives with a vengeance.
Yes, 1936. The outbreak of the Spanish Civil War. This is where the story shifts from royal legends of the sea into the gritty, terrifying logistics of modern industrialized warfare.
The war breaks out, and the Republican government immediately realizes that El Escorial, packed with national treasures, is a massive target.
A sitting duck, really.
So they make the harrowing decision to evacuate the descent from the cross. First, they move it to the Museo del Prado in Madrid.
But Madrid becomes a nightmare very quickly.
Exactly. The city is subjected to intense aerial bombardment. Buildings are collapsing, fires are raging. The team tasked with saving the national heritage has to move it again. They pack it onto trucks and flee to Valencia, trying to outrun the bombers.
I want you to really visualize the logistics of what you just described. Yeah. We aren't talking about tossing a rolled up canvas into the back of a car.
No, not at all.
This painting is constructed on 11 massive, thick, vertical planks of Baltic oak. It is incredibly heavy, rigid, and fragile.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about how heavy 11 planks of oak would be.
Extremely heavy. Driving an object of that size and density across a war-torn country, over ruined roads, constantly scanning the sky for aircraft, it's a terrifying undertaking.
And the terror doesn't stop in Valencia. The front lines keep shifting, and Valencia becomes too dangerous.
They just couldn't keep it safe there.
So, on February 3rd, 1939, as the Civil War is reaching its final, brutal conclusion, the decision is made to evacuate the painting entirely out of Spain. It gets shipped to Geneva, Switzerland.
Going into international exile alongside the absolute greatest treasures of the Prado, it was a desperate, desperate move to save its life.
Fortunately, the war ends on April 1st, 1939. And by September of that year, after an immense diplomatic effort, the evacuated art is brought home.
The painting makes the long, exhausting journey back to Spain.
And by 1943, under the new Franco government, it's formally deposited into the Prado Museum, where it underwent a meticulous, highly successful restoration in the early 1990s.
When you lay that entire timeline out, from 1435 to today, what is truly astonishing is the sheer physical stamina of the object.
Right. 11 planks of Baltic oak. That's it.
And it endures shifting humidity in damp medieval chapels, sea voyages, the back and forth between royal palaces.
Being strapped into military trucks dodging 20th century bombs.
Yes, and crossing international borders. And yet it survives in spectacular condition. The density of the Baltic oak certainly provided a stable foundation. But its survival really is a testament to the thousands of people over centuries who recognized its value and risked everything to protect it.
Okay, so we've tracked the miraculous journey of the physical object. We know how it survived bombs and oceans. Now, I want to pivot.
Let's get into the mechanics.
Exactly. We need to look closely at the actual image itself. How is this thing built? Because to understand why everyone from a Habsburg empress to the Republican army risked so much for it, we have to understand the optical illusions it's pulling off.
Absolutely. The architecture of the image is where van der Weyden's genius truly reveals itself. And the first thing we have to conceptualize is its massive scale.
Let's talk about those dimensions. We are looking at a wooden panel that is 2.6 meters wide by 2.2 meters high.
That is about 8.5 feet wide and over 7 feet tall.
It is enormous. But it's not a standard perfect rectangle. It has this very strange shape. It looks like an upside-down T with a very fat, wide base.
Right, an inverted T.
The top center of the painting protrudes upward, breaking the rectangular frame. And that extra headroom is there specifically to fit the top of the wooden cross and the young man who is perched high up on a ladder, leaning over to lower Christ's body.
And that irregular upside-down T shape isn't just a quirky design choice.
It's not.
No, it is our first major clue to the brilliant economic and artistic strategy van der Weyden deployed. We have to remember the Crossbowmen Guild. They wanted a showstopper for their chapel.
But in Northern Europe during the 1430s, the most prestigious type of altarpiece wasn't a flat painting, was it?
Exactly. It was a massive, three-dimensional polychrome wooden sculpture. We are talking about life-sized, deeply carved wooden figures painted in vivid, lifelike colors, placed inside a deep wooden cabinet or niche.
But the labor involved in that is staggering. Carving a dozen life-sized human figures out of solid blocks of wood and then hiring a painter to color them perfectly, the cost must have been astronomical.
Only the wealthiest of the wealthy could afford it.
So the guild probably couldn't afford a top-tier sculptural altarpiece, or van der Weyden wanted to prove that his brush was mightier than a chisel.
I lean toward the latter, honestly. Van der Weyden couldn't or wouldn't give them a giant, heavy physical sculpture. So he did something entirely revolutionary.
What did he do?
He painted an incredibly realistic three-dimensional sculpture group inside a shallow box-like space. He used a two-dimensional medium to mimic and frankly surpass the most expensive three-dimensional medium of his day.
This is the part that completely blows my mind. He essentially used the absolute highest tech 2D rendering available in the 1430s to fake a practical 3D effect.
Yes, exactly.
It is the Renaissance equivalent of James Cameron directing Avatar. Cameron wanted to build an entire alien world, but he couldn't build it practically, so he pushed CGI technology to the absolute limit until the human brain couldn't tell the difference between a pixel and a physical object.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
van der Weyden is doing the exact same thing. He's telling the guild, you want a 3D sculpture? Fine, I will paint a 2D image so aggressively real, your depth perception will simply surrender.
He is actively hacking the viewer's depth perception. And he achieves this through a technique called trompe-l'œil, a French term meaning to deceive the eye.
Right, an optical illusion.
Yes, designed to trick the brain into perceiving a painted detail as a physical, three-dimensional object.
And how exactly does he pull that trick off here? Because when I look at Italian Renaissance paintings from the same exact era, there's always this massive, sprawling landscape in the background.
Right, the rolling Tuscan hills.
Yeah, fading into a hazy blue sky miles into the distance. It creates this deep, expansive window, but van der Weyden doesn't do that at all.
No, he does the exact opposite. He completely eliminates the deep landscape. Instead, van der Weyden's background is a flat, smooth golden board.
It looks like a wall.
It's painted to look exactly like the back wall of a shallow wooden cabinet or a funerary box. To sell the illusion that this is a physical wooden box extending out toward you, he paints these intricate Gothic traceries tucked into the top corners.
Those delicate, carved wooden architectural ornaments.
Exactly. But he paints them to look like physical carved wood, and he even paints the tiny, precise shadows those traceries would cast onto the gold background. He is physically framing his own painting from the inside, forcing you to see it as a carved niche.
But I want to pause on that flat gold background, because it's not just an architectural trick to make the box look shallow, is it? There's a massive symbolic weight to the use of gold.
Profoundly so. The tradition of using a gold background dates all the way back to ancient Egypt, and it carried through Byzantine icons into the Middle Ages.
Because gold doesn't tarnish, right?
Right. It doesn't oxidize, it doesn't degrade. Therefore, it became the universal symbol for eternity. It represents the unchanging, timeless realm of the divine.
Oh.
By placing these incredibly realistic, fleshy, suffering, and dying human figures directly against a flat backdrop of eternal divine gold, van der Weyden is visually bridging the gap. He is placing the messy reality of human death right up against the eternal promise of God.
And the psychological effect of that golden wall is intense, because there is no sprawling landscape, no distant mountains to look at, and only a tiny narrow sliver of dirt at the very bottom for the figures to stand on. The viewer's eye has absolutely no way to escape.
You're trapped.
Exactly. Van der Weyden forces your eyes directly onto this claustrophobic tangle of intertwined weeping bodies. You can't look away at a pretty bird in the sky to relieve the tension. You are locked in the shallow golden box with their grief.
It creates a sense of immediate, inescapable intimacy. The figures are pushed right up to the very front of the picture plane. They feel like they are practically spilling out of the wooden frame and into the physical space of the chapel with you.
Okay, so we have this brilliant 3D optical illusion set inside a claustrophobic golden box. But to pull off this level of hyperrealism, to make the brain believe the flat board is three-dimensional, Van der Weyden had to rely on a massive technological leap in the chemistry of art.
Yes, we need to shift from the space he built to the actual materials he used to build it.
Because we were talking about the oil revolution, right?
We are. This is the precise moment in history where Northern Renaissance art changes the trajectory of Western painting forever.
I have to admit, before looking into this, I sort of thought oil painting was just what painters always used, but that's not true at all.
Not even close.
Before Van der Weyden's era, if you were a master artist, you're mostly using tempera, which is a pigment mixed with egg yolk, or you were painting frescoes, applying pigment directly onto wet plaster walls.
Right, and both tempera and fresco have severe chemical limitations. They dry extremely fast.
So you can't really fix mistakes.
No, once you put the brush down, the paint is set within minutes. You cannot easily blend colors, and the resulting image, while beautiful, tends to look relatively flat and opaque. Oil paint specifically, the slow-drying linseed or walnut oils, perfected by the Flemish masters, change the chemistry of art entirely.
Because it dries slowly, right? You can take your time.
You can take your time, yes, but more importantly, oil paint is translucent. It isn't opaque like egg yolk.
Oh, interesting.
This allowed Van der Weyden to use a technique called glazing. He could apply a microscopic, almost completely transparent layer of colored oil over a dried layer, then another and another, sometimes dozens of layers.
And what does that do to the light?
Light literally passes through these thin, translucent layers of oil, hits the white primer on the wooden board underneath, and bounces back out to the viewer's eye.
It's like placing a sheet of perfectly clear red-stained glass over a silver mirror. The light travels through the color, hits the mirror, and shines back at you. It gives the painting an inner luminosity. It literally glows from within.
That is the perfect way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And Van der Weyden uses this new translucent chemistry to just relentlessly show off his technical prowess.
It really does.
He goes out of his way to paint the most complex, varied textures imaginable. The precision is staggering. He paints luxurious, soft mink fur. He paints shimmering, reflective silk. He paints heavy, stiff brocades woven with gold thread.
It's unbelievable.
He paints smooth, cool blue satin. And for the Virgin Mary's sprawling robes, he uses lapis lazuli.
Lapis lazuli, we need to talk about this because this isn't just blue paint he picked up at the hardware store.
No, definitely not.
Lapis lazuli was a pigment made from crushing actual semi-precious stones that had to be mined in the mountains of Afghanistan, transported across the Silk Road, and meticulously ground down in a mortar and pestle.
It was literally more expensive than gold.
Using it was a massive flex of wealth and devotion.
The ability to render the specific tactile quality of a piece of mink fur so perfectly that it looks distinct from a piece of silk, that hyper-focus on material reality, is the hallmark of Flemish painting. It was a demonstration of absolute mastery.
But I have to push back here because this has been bothering me.
Okay, sure.
Why go to such insane lengths to paint a hyper-realistic piece of expensive mink fur or perfectly shiny, wealthy silk in a scene about a brutal, bloody crucifixion?
I see what you mean.
Doesn't outfitting these characters in the haute couture of 15th century elite fashion distract from the spiritual message? Doesn't the wealth of the fabric contradict the poverty of Christ?
That is a crucial tension to point out, but in the context of Northern Renaissance theology, it doesn't distract at all. It anchors the divine.
How so?
For Van der Weyden and his contemporaries, the spiritual world and the material world were deeply intertwined. God was revealed in the microscopic details of creation. By painting the fabric so realistically that you instinctively feel you could reach out and touch the heavy brocade, he makes the scene undeniably real to the viewer.
So it makes it less of a myth and more of a reality.
Exactly. He is saying, this isn't a fairy tale that happened in a distant desert. This happened in our world, to people who look and dress just like the wealthy citizens of your city.
Wow.
The juxtaposition of these hyper-realistic, luxurious fabrics against the brutal, pale reality of a dead human body grounds the scene. If your brain believes the silk is physically real, your heart believes the sorrow is physically real.
That makes profound sense. The hyperrealism of the material world is a bridge to emotional empathy. And he doesn't just use texture to guide our emotions, he uses the actual temperature of the colors.
Yes, his application of color theory is incredibly sophisticated. He uses light and shadow, a technique that would later be codified as chiaroscuro, to sculpt the three-dimensional volume of the figures.
But he also assigns specific color palettes, right?
Right, based on the psychological state of the characters.
That?
The figures who are the most pathetic, and I mean pathetic in the classical Greek sense of pathos, evoking extreme suffering and pity, are painted in stark, cold colors.
Like the weeping women.
Yes, the women weeping, the Virgin Mary collapsing in a massive pool of pale blue lapis, the young man on the ladder wearing a cooler, icy tone. Meanwhile, the assisting figures, the men who are actively working, holding the heavy body, are painted in rich, warm colors.
It creates a subtle visual temperature that unconsciously guides your emotional response to each character.
Exactly.
And while you're completely overwhelmed by these sweeping robes and intensely colored fabrics, van der Weyden hides these tiny, easily missed details at the very bottom foreground that carry massive theological weight.
They're so easy to miss if you aren't looking.
Down near the very bottom of the painting, resting on that tiny, narrow sliver of dirt near the fainting hand of the Virgin Mary, there lies an elongated bone and a human skull.
The skull is a crucial marker. It represents Golgotha, which translates directly to the place of the skull, the biblical location of the crucifixion.
But there's another layer to it, right?
There is. Medieval tradition held that Golgotha was the exact burial site of Adam, the very first man. So by placing the skull there, van der Weyden is planting the symbol of humanity's original sin and the origin of human death, right at the literal foundation of the cross.
But here is the genius part. Right next to that dry, dead skull of Adam, van der Weyden paints a tiny, living, vibrant green bush.
Which is a profound piece of visual theology perfectly executed.
It really is.
Presenting a live green plant emerging from the dirt right next to the dry bone is a direct symbol of life persisting after death. It is the Christian promise of resurrection, planted right next to the ultimate symbol of human mortality.
Even in this suffocating, claustrophobic box of absolute despair, van der Weyden leaves a tiny green visual whisper of hope.
It is just breathtaking attention to detail.
Okay, so we have the incredible 3D illusion of the golden box. We have the translucent chemistry of the oil paint making the textures hyper-real. We have the color theory dictating the emotional temperature.
All working together.
But all of this technique serves one singular ultimate purpose: emotional devastation. And to understand how he achieves that, we have to look at the actual skeleton of the painting. How are these bodies physically arranged to break your heart?
To understand the geometry of the piece, we first need to identify the cast of characters which van der Weyden pulled directly from the gospel narratives.
Right. At the very center, obviously, we have the pale, lifeless body of Christ being lowered from the cross.
And the wealthy man receiving the body, holding the fine white linen cloth which the biblical text notes is infused with the aromatic spices for burial, is Joseph of Arimathea.
And helping him support the immense dead weight of the body is an older man with a white beard, Nicodemus. And what's fascinating about their faces is that they aren't wailing or crying out loud.
No, they're very restrained.
They show this quiet, absolute consternation. They are just stunned by the heavy, irreversible reality of death in their arms.
Their constrained internal grief acts as a perfect counterbalance to the explosive outward agony of the other figures. And this is where van der Weyden's strict, almost mathematical geometric composition comes into play.
The hidden skeleton we mentioned.
Yes. When you really study the placement of the bodies, you realize the entire chaotic scene is rigidly locked inside a hidden structural oval. But more importantly, the scene is framed by two specific figures on the far outer edges who act exactly like parentheses.
The parentheses of pain. On the far right side, we have Mary Magdalene, and her figure is widely considered the most successful, agonizing expression of pain in the entire painting.
She is just devastated.
She is bent violently forward, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles are white, her body literally contorted into a rigid curve of agony. The oil paint is used so masterfully here that her tears look like physical, three-dimensional pearls of glass resting on her skin.
And if you look to the exact opposite side, on the far left, We have the young Apostle John, dressed in a striking, vibrant red robe.
Notice his bodily movement, too.
Right, he is leaning forward, rushing to catch the fainting Virgin Mary, and his body forms a curved bracket on the left, perfectly mirroring the curved bracket Mary Magdalene forms on the right.
They are the parentheses containing the chaos of the grief within the golden box.
It creates this brilliant sense of balance. But the invisible geometry goes even deeper than those outer edges. You can trace an invisible diagonal line that slices right through the center of the composition.
Wait, really? A diagonal line?
Yes. If you draw a perfectly straight diagonal line, starting from the head of the young man up on the ladder, it flows straight down through the collapsing body of the Virgin Mary and ends precisely at St. John's right foot.
That is wild.
And simultaneously, if you draw a horizontal line across the painting, the faces of almost all the main characters align perfectly on that horizontal axis. So you have this rigid mathematical grid, a horizontal axis of faces, a diagonal slice of bodies, all enclosed within the parentheses of John and Magdalene.
But the magic is that when you look at the painting, it doesn't feel like a rigid mathematical grid. You don't see the math.
Not at all.
Because that strict geometry is entirely softened and hidden by the organic, undulating curves of the weeping human bodies. The hidden structure supports the emotion, so the chaos of the grief didn't just devolve into visual noise. It directs your eye precisely where the artist demands it to go.
Exactly. The structure is the invisible hand guiding your empathy. Which brings us to the absolute center of the painting, the climax of the entire piece.
This is the ultimate aha moment of this deep dive. Let's slow down and look at the center.
Let's do it.
The Virgin Mary has fainted. Her body is collapsing toward the ground. Her face is as pale as a ghost, essentially drained of all life. And right above her, the dead body of Jesus is being suspended in the air.
Look closely at their arms. Look at the angle of their torsos.
Their bodies are positioned in the exact same shape.
It is a stunning visual echo. And this isn't just an aesthetic choice van der Weyden made to create visual harmony. What's fascinating here is that this mirrored posture is a highly specific, radical visual representation of a complex theological concept.
The concept known as Compassion Maria.
Precisely, Compassion Maria. Literally, co-passion, suffering with. It translates to the suffering of Mary.
So how did people in the 15th century understand that?
To understand this, we have to step into the mindset of a 15th century believer. The theology of the time proposed something incredibly radical. It held that the Virgin Mary's emotional and spiritual suffering at the foot of the cross was so absolute, so agonizing, that it was literally equal to the physical torture of Christ being crucified.
Her emotional pain mirrored his physical destruction.
Their lives and their agonies were perfectly parallel. By painting Mary's swooning body in the exact same curved, drooping posture as her dead son, van der Weyden is illustrating Compassion Maria without writing a single theological treatise.
He is visually proving that a mother's grief is a crucifixion of the soul.
Beautifully put.
And van der Weyden leaves one final, incredibly subtle detail to permanently cement this connection. We talked about Mary Magdalene on the right, forming that right parenthesis. She is wearing a belt, which in this context is a traditional symbol of virginity and purity.
Right.
Now, if you draw a line following the visual path of that belt, it forms a direct, unbroken line between the pale feet of Christ and the fainting head of the Virgin Mary. They are physically connected by this invisible line. And inscribed directly onto that belt are two words, IEESVS Maria.
Jesus and Mary. The unifying belt literally spells out the theological connection that their mirroring bodies are acting out. It ties the entire vast, complex message together with a final, exquisite detail hidden in plain sight.
It is an absolute masterclass in visual engineering. We have covered so much ground today. Let's quickly recap the sheer scale of what we've unpacked.
It's been a journey.
We started in the 1430s with a powerful guild of crossbowmen in Leuven who wanted a machine for spiritual weeping. We saw that painting become a royal obsession for Mary of Hungary, who willingly traded the 16th century equivalent of a hospital wing, a massive church organ, just to have it in her private palace.
A true shift in the art world.
We tracked its miraculous survival through legendary shipwrecks where royal bubble wrap saved the day. And we saw King Philip II become so reverent that the ultimate micromanager refused to let his best painters touch the weeping faces.
Then we followed it into the terrifying modern era of the Spanish Civil War.
Visualizing the sheer terror of evacuating a massive oak panel from Madrid to Valencia to Geneva, dodging aerial bombs to preserve its existence for future generations.
And then we broke down the machine itself. We saw how van der Weyden created a 15th century cinematic experience by faking a 3D wooden sculpture inside a claustrophobic golden box.
We explored how he used the translucent chemistry of slow-drying oil paint to render mink fur and imported lapis lazuli, grounding the divine in our tangible reality.
And finally, we uncovered the hidden mathematical geometry of grief, the parentheses of pain, the diagonal grids, and the ultimate central mirror of Compasio Maria, binding the suffering of mother and son in a radical display of empathy.
It truly is one of the greatest achievements in the history of human expression, and I want to connect this back to you listening right now.
The takeaways are still so relevant.
The next time you are standing in a museum looking at a painting, or honestly, even when you are sitting on your couch watching a brilliantly framed scene in a movie or a television show, I want you to remember van der Weyden. Look for that invisible geometry guiding your eyes.
Look for the temperature of the colors telling your brain how to feel.
The greatest artists and directors today are still utilizing the exact same tools van der Weyden perfected in 1435 to bypass your logic and speak directly to your heart.
And as we close, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Today, this painting sits beautifully lit, perfectly safe, and meticulously preserved behind the climate-controlled walls of the Prado Museum.
It's a very different environment.
Completely different. People walk by, they stop for a moment, they take a quick picture with their smartphone, and they move on to the next room. But remember the context of its creation.
Right.
This object was designed to be viewed in a dim, candlelit chapel, filled with the smell of incense, surrounded by chanting, by people who genuinely believed their eternal salvation depended on understanding and feeling the agonizing pain depicted on those wooden boards.
So different from a museum.
So I ask you, when an image designed to elicit shared, communal weeping in the 15th century becomes a silent, safe object of aesthetic study in the 21st century, does it lose its original power? Or do you think its power just changes form, waiting patiently for us to really look at it again?
That is a phenomenal question and exactly why we do this. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to go online right now, find the highest resolution image you can of El Descendimiento, and look closely. Zoom in on those tiny hidden crossbows in the corners. Look at the glass-like tears resting on Mary Magdalene's face. See if you can feel the weight of that 15th century silence. We will see you next time.